Greetings and salutations. It is I, what is left of Russ Kane. You're tuned in to The Daily Show, right here on a men's radio station. What a weekend it's been. By Jiminy Crickets. It's been freaking huge, to be perfectly honest with you. Absolutely massive. Apart from yesterday, when I was just on my own the whole day. Like falling off a cliff, isn't it, really? It's just like falling off a cliff, baby. And that's how it is. Anyway, I hope you're all good. Start of another very, 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 very busy, another busy week. Only my fantastic cousin would have got me a T-shirt for my birthday. I don't know if you can see it says, what does it say? I believe that the pipe, I can't read the rest of it because my eyesight's crap. Anyway, but only she would get me a T-shirt that matches my pipe. Look at this. Matches my pipe. Well, it's one of my pipes. That's because cigars have gone through the roof in cost. I'll prefer my cigars. But the cost of cigars is insane. First world problem. You're worrying how to put food on the table. I'm worrying about the cost of cigars. Screw it. That's how it is. Right. What do we got? Any comments? Here we go. Hello all. Another week, another chancellor. Be another prime minister at this rate. What a freaking farce. What an absolute load of bollocks. It's absolutely ridiculous. Not only have I got a fabulous T-shirt, but look, my other cousin, well, I had loads of cousins over for at my daughter's for tea. Beautiful new mug with my name on it. Let's kick off the week as we start to go on with a special guest. Now, I went to a film premiere. I didn't know the bloody film was 15 minutes long, for Christ's sake. Wouldn't have hung around in Soho for 4 hours, but I thought it was a full film, right? 15 minutes long. Jesus Christ. Anyhow, I was really pissed off, but I didn't show it. Anyway, so I'm there, and this very attractive woman comes up. Hi, how are you? And I'm thinking, I have no idea who this woman is. Not a clue. And I said, I was polite. I said, lovely to see you. Blah, 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 blah. Nice. And then I realized the mistake was she'd seen me loads and loads of times on Talk TV, where she is like the grande fromage, but I'd never seen her. But we've been hundreds and hundreds of emails and all the rest of the stuff that gets going. Anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Gabriella.
Hello. Happy birthday, belated birthday.
Well, it was on. When was it? Saturday, wasn't it? It was Saturday. Yes. So thank you for that, darling. I appreciate it.
So 40 again. I just kind of lost the number. Is it 40?
You lost the number. Gabs, well, shut it. Here's Julie Voice coming in. We have people, by the way, watching and listening. I know you think I make it up, and she's coming in from the United States, down south. Good morning. Hope you had a splendiferous birthday. I did. Love the jacket. Oh, bless you. Yes, I wore a very silly jacket for my daughter's tea, and then I changed for dinner in the evening, because not only you ladies can change. And then Ramsey is saying the cost of tobacco. My dad used to smoke Clan. Oh, Jesus, I remember that. I checked last week, and a 50-gram pack was about 20 quid. Yeah. Oh, dear. Very, very. Elizabeth Green's watching you and listening to you, Gabby, from Manhattan. Morning to you. Sue Sleet is up in Fife in Scotland. That's it. Right. Now, let's crack on. Tell us a bit. Oh, hang on. We haven't finished yet. And now from New York State, it's Asa Don Brown, who's very, very senior.
Hello.
He's very senior in the psychotherapeutic community. Does this make, look, the thing about a pipe, right? I don't like it as much as a cigar, but look, you could say anything to me and I can go, interesting point, Gabriella. Interesting. Let me think about it. Meanwhile, in my head is nothing. You understand that? It's the most fantastic prop. And coming in, the David Tennant traitor couldn't come to my birthday because she had to go and see David Tennant because I didn't love David Tennant. Leslie Demesa, hi. And Liz Saul saying hello from wherever Liz Saul is hiding. Right, okay, let's crack on, gang. So tell us about yourself, and more importantly, why you are here, why I wanted you here.
Well, okay, so in a nutshell, I'm an Italian journalist and producer. I produce a few shows on Talk TV, as you mentioned earlier. The Grand Fromage, I love that.
You are the Grand Fromage.
No.
You're the Padano of producers.
I'm the stinker bit of a show, right? That's what you're trying to say.
No, I'm going to say something, and I don't often say this. I've only met Gabs once, right? And here's the thing: we had to have hundreds of emails going backwards and forwards, and she was so, and I can't tell you how rare this is, so efficient, so charming, so friendly, and so helpful. It was fantastic. So I really, really appreciate it. So I'm saying that publicly. Trust me, you don't get that all the time.
Oh, thank you very much. So yes, so apart from working at Talk TV,
still going, is it then? Still going?
Yes, of course.
Okay, just checking. No, now that I'm not there, I just wondered whether Rupert and Rebecca had just closed it. You know, they just Russ isn't here, and what's the point? Russ is gone. Why bother? That's what. Anyway, go on.
Who knows? They might be plotting a show just for you.
If they had any brains, they would. But anyway, there we go.
Well, so the machine is in motion.
Continued. Me and Phil Dave would just kill those ratings. We'd smash it. We would, and the listeners
would be all in stitches.
They'd love it. What the hell? We'd love it. We could do a late night show.
They would. Let's launch an appeal.
Okay, let's get on. Let's get on to you, Gabs. Get on to you.
So as a journalist and producer, I invite people on shows all the time. I'm always looking for guests. I'm looking for interesting stories. So I've always been.
Speaking of uninteresting stories.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Gabriella. How are you?
I'm very well.
I apologise for my tardiness. I'm away on holiday, and the internet where I am is really poor. And if you could have seen my producer, he's just got another 4 grey hairs trying to get us in. But we are live from
we can see you and hear you brilliantly.
Brilliantly, yeah. No, it's good. It's good now.
Something behind you. What is it? Is it pots or what
they
is it?
are actually,
in a pottery now.
They're pose. You know what? They're basically pose.
Sit upon.
Ah,
what? They're hose? Yes. What's the matter? You're in a brothel.
No, pose, not hose.
Oh,
got any hose?
Got any hose?
We're live from the Yew Tree pub in Hayling Island. Thank you to Bill and all the team for letting us do the show from here today. Much appreciated. But that's it. I'm not going to make any more of a flourish of an entrance. Gabriella, it's lovely.
No, you completely screwed it up. You've ruined the whole tempo. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Gabby, you carry on.
I've only just started. Don't worry. So no, what I was just saying is that as a journalist and the producer, it's my job to always look out for interesting stories, people with tales to tell that usually either can educate, inspire, or entertain people. Those are the kind of 3 cardinal points that I'm always looking for. So when something quite life-changing happened to me, I felt I would have been a bit of a hypocrite not to actually talk about it. Because if I'm always asking for people, come on, tell us your stories, sometimes very difficult stories, dealing with grief, dealing with horrific accidents, talking about losing a job or sort of going bankrupt, and really, really difficult things to talk about, then I sort of felt, well, now it's kind of my turn, and I think it's an important subject. So just last week and at the weekend, it was World Miscarriage Day. It was celebrating, celebrating is a strange word, but, it was raising awareness for child
It was
loss
recognizing,
and,
maybe, Gabby, maybe recognizing.
Recognizing, exactly, not celebrating. Recognizing that there are a lot of people, women, suffering miscarriages or child loss very early in pregnancy. And it's something that it's difficult to talk about. And my stance is I'm bringing you my experience because I'm hoping that from this, you'll take away some points of how perhaps you can support people going through it. Because we sometimes don't know people going through miscarriage. It's a very personal, intimate thing. But if you have a colleague or a friend or a boss or your neighbor or just people around you, your cousin, your friend, your sister, someone in your family or in your extended circle would have gone through it.
Yeah.
And I was gobsmacked. I'll tell you my story in a moment, but I was gobsmacked to find out how many people came to me once I'd started talking about my experience and came up to me and said, oh, it happened to me. It happened to my sister. It happened to my daughter. It happened to my mom. And to a point that it almost got me a bit annoyed because I was thinking, hold on a minute, why didn't I know this before? Even close friends, I was like, really, did you? My sister-in-law told me about hers. I was thinking, how did I not know? Why are we not talking about this? It's so hard and uncomfortable, but it also is so common. We're talking about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage.
Good God.
It's a lot.
I
And
never knew it was that high.
No, I'm with Neil here. Gabs, I never knew that those were the stats. I'm absolutely shocked.
It is quite a revelation, though, isn't it, when you do start talking about these difficult subjects, because like you say, we don't talk about it, and the nature of anything like this is very isolating. You think I'm the only one, and the minute you start to be brave enough to take that step to talk about it, you realize that could not be further from the truth.
Absolutely. And the difficult thing with stats is they say under 30, under 35, it's a lot less. It could be 1 in 8, but over 30, 35, it becomes 1 in 5, 1 in 4. Over 40, it becomes literally 1 in 3. So, but the problem is it's very hard to find those stats because a lot of miscarriage happens in the first 6 weeks.
Good Lord.
Sometimes...
Look at this, Gabby. I'm so sorry. But this is the whole joy of the way that we do Men's Radio Daily Show. Chrissy Richards, who's had some horrible times the last few, awful. I'm not going to go into it now, just awful. She lives in Spain on a farm, regular viewer and listener. And she said, I had 4. And the reason I read this out, by the way, Gabs, is not to fill up time. It's because Deluxe Radio, take our stream. There's 70,000 people at the moment just on Deluxe listening to this, but they can't see the show. They only hear audio feed. I had 4 miscarriages. The last one nearly killed me. No help or guidance at all. Chrissy, you have had one hell of a life.
Wow, I feel for you. 4 miscarriages. I mean, I heard, I was talking about this, and a doctor, I was talking to her, she had 10. 10. I don't even
my God.
understand how you find the strength to try
how
again.
How do you keep going?
That. But
why would you keep going? I always got to say, why would you keep? That's
in a way, I would kind of think the same, and I think, but in the end, she did have a little girl, and she has a 4-year-old daughter. So in her opinion, she looks back and thinks it was all worth it. It was painful, but I mean, I've had 3, and the thought
whoa! Don't just slide. Don't think.
No. I want to give you the story.
You're not going to slide that past me and Neil. There, you've had 3.
Right. So yes, the last one was only 7 weeks ago. So very, very recent. If you want, I'll tell you a little bit of the story. So the first one. So I'm in my 40s. Never thought I'd try before my 40th birthday. Simply because I didn't meet the right person. And, it takes time before you sort of decide, okay, I want to have a child with this person. And then when I started trying, I was very open to the idea, but I also was very aware. The stats, again, they tell you over 40, your chances are probably between 3 to 5% to conceive naturally. I was never intended to try any other way other than naturally. I wasn't interested in going down the IVF route, although my 2 best friends both have, and they have both wonderful children as a result. But for me, it was more of a case of, well, let's see what happens. Went in a bit blind, not really knowing. I knew that the odds were against me, and then I thought, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That kind of Italian or culture of see what happens, right? With the hands gesture if you can't see me. Anyway, so the first time I got pregnant, I was quite surprised. I honestly thought it wasn't going to happen. But unfortunately, I lost it fairly early, I think 6-7 weeks, and that was during the pandemic. So even though I managed it at home, it wasn't particularly bad. But I didn't really have much support because, even going to a hospital is not an option. It was really, really shortly, a few weeks after lockdown, the first lockdown. The second time was only this year. It was in March. And by then I was about 9 weeks pregnant. And, I hear something. What was that?
Neil, I don't know if you know, but we can hear all sorts of music in the background. I don't know why.
It's because I'm in a pub.
It's gone. Okay.
I'll mute myself.
Just do the Russie method. Go up and slap somebody very hard and tell them to turn it down.
No, I'll just mute myself unless I want to speak.
Okay, lovely. And so the second time was early this year. So it was in March. I was about 9 weeks. And at that point, I was sort of thinking, it wasn't a very good one. I ended up going to A&E. They give you some parameters of what to look for. So the first time managed at home, second time I had to go to A&E, and my partner, bless him, he returned home, found me in quite distress and quite a lot of blood loss. And so I had to go to A&E and had a small procedure there to kind of, move on from that. But the last one, that was the most traumatic. And that, as I said, only happened a few weeks ago. And what happened there was, you'd think, I got to a point where I'm not trying, not interested, done. It was too stressful, too bad, I'm done. But, destiny has a way of sort of, playing with you. And when you really, really least expect it, and we're talking about moving house, which is the most stressful time, the kind of like, I'm not trying, so I'm drinking and eating what I like. So all the to-do list that you're supposed to follow when you're trying to conceive, it kind of went out the window. So, and we were not trying. So I don't know how it happened, but I got pregnant again. And at first, and this is quite interesting because I wonder if some of your listeners have experienced the same. I almost felt guilty because I was like, I had so much support and so much love from everyone else when it happened just 3 months ago. How can I tell them it's happened again when I told everyone, oh, I'm not going to try. I'm not, this is it, me done. So there was a bit of a shame involved. And also I kind of...
All you had to do was say there was nothing on the telly that night and everybody would have understood. Just putting it out there.
Well, we were moving, so we didn't have a telly. That's probably what happened.
There you go. You see the perfect excuse.
So I went to my GP and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm kind of here again, but, I'm pregnant again. And she was like, no, it's fine. Everyone was really nice. And, when you get pregnant at 45, 46, you're kind of almost embarrassed. You're thinking, gosh, my mum was, I was 25 when my mum was that age. I kind of felt, a bit embarrassed and stuff. But everyone was reassuring and everyone said, don't worry, it will be fine. So then I kind of started getting excited. I was like, actually, you know what? This could happen. And I thought maybe a third time lucky and all of that. And things progressed really well. That's what got me. I had, yes, of course, all the symptoms of pregnancy, which you guys will never experience, but it's not fun. But at the same time, I just thought, well, it's all part of it. And it was going really well. So we went to, so my doctor was really sweet. She said, look, because it's the third time, what I suggest is, let's get a scan in early. So on the NHS in this country, you get a scan between 12 weeks to kind of decide whether it's a viable pregnancy. So you're going from those 2 lines on that stick at 5 weeks to having to wait another 7 weeks to know if it's actually viable. Now, that alone is really excruciating because you can't tell anyone. Well, you can, of course you can. But if it's your third time, you're a bit more careful who you tell because you're kind of a bit, oh, no, it's here again. And people will say, oh, let's see if this happens and if this works. Everyone's a bit more skeptical by then. So you don't tend to tell anyone. You can't tell at work, but you're feeling so nauseous. You're feeling really like you're struggling. Your body's kind of been taken over and you're not yourself anymore. And so anyway, then you just kind of think, well, anyway, let's see what happens. So those weeks pass and they feel so slow. And then we go for a scan. We are lucky, we get a scan earlier. So my GP said, because of your experience, let's see if we can get one earlier, just to say it's viable, also for your mental health. So at least the sooner the sooner, you can deal with it. So we went for I think it was 9 weeks in the end. And unfortunately, there was no heartbeat. And it was. But what was really strange is that I didn't believe it because I was feeling great. Like in the previous times, I had some spotting, some bleeding, some symptoms that something wasn't quite right. Whereas this time I was great. I was like, I have nothing wrong with me. I feel fantastic. Even my mental health was like, I feel great. I feel empowered. I feel strong. So I was in quite a bit of denial. Sorry, there's a little cat meowing behind the door who wants to get in. Let's ignore her for now.
Bring the cat in.
I'll bring her in a moment.
He's welcome.
You've got to understand that Ebony, the mini schnauzer, is only ever 2 feet away from me during any show.
Oh.
It looks professional, but it's shambolic, really.
Well, it's your assistant, right?
Don't tell her that. She'll want a pay rise.
As long as she keeps your feet warm, right?
Well, she's very, very difficult. Anyway, there we go.
And anyway, so then, so I kind of said, no, she probably got it wrong. I was in a bit of denial. And my partner as well, he was like, oh, she must have got it wrong. It can happen. Maybe it's a 1% chance they get it wrong, but maybe they got it wrong. So that whole week I was still feeling fine, went back to to have a scan, and they confirmed, sadly, there's no heartbeat, there's no growth. I'm so sorry. You haven't miscarried naturally. Now you have a couple of options. You can, but we suggest, they don't actually tell you, but the logical best thing to do was to have a procedure to get it removed. And unfortunately, I was booked in the next day for a procedure. And they said, well, let's do a planned procedure. So it's not going to be, ironically, as traumatic as it was last time when you ended up in A&E. But, oh, the irony. Anyway, we ended up going 7 a.m. on a Thursday. Great. You'll be seeing the first one, 8:30. It's your turn. Great. Everything is fine. I'm feeling fine. But then no one comes. Wait, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. By 7 o'clock, by then I hadn't eaten for about 24 hours.
No, you've been there 12 hours and no one turns up.
No. Telling me that they couldn't fit me in for a procedure that day. It was just too busy at the hospital. And bearing in mind, I'm feeling fine. I have no issues.
That's not the point. That's not the point, is it?
I know. But it kind of makes sense from their point of view. They probably had other emergencies. I wasn't one. So they said, would you like to stay overnight? And we'll see you first thing in the morning. I said, fine. So my partner stayed with me until 10 o'clock at night. And then eventually he left. I went to sleep, woke up about 1 a.m, and I wasn't feeling quite right. I was like, something's happening. And it started naturally. I won't go into too much detail, but within a couple of hours, I started bleeding so heavily that it was becoming a very serious emergency. But the sad thing was that the nurse saw me at 1 o'clock and said, oh, you're starting with a bit of bleeding. Just don't worry, just go and sleep. And then in the morning, they will take care of it. But and said, if you need anything, ring the bell. And then, of course, a couple of hours later, I realized things were going really out of control. So I rang that bell, but no one came. That's when So I waited. Yeah. So I don't know if you've been overnight in hospitals. When you ring the bell, there's a little beeping that happens every 60 seconds. So there's like that beep that's calling. It's really quite annoying. You can't fall asleep. You hear it everyone else. Anyway, that went off 53 times. So I waited at least 53 minutes. And then when the situation was like a murder scene at that point in that room, I literally somehow managed to drag myself on all fours and come out of my room, leaving a trail of blood and sort of like, help, please come and help me. And then from that moment on, things moved so quickly. I don't even remember. I know that suddenly I was ready for surgery. And
was there any explanation of why the hell they'd left you in an appalling state for an hour? What were they on tea break? What were they doing?
I don't know. It was the middle of the night, I guess, short-staffed and all of that. But as a result of that, I lost 2 liters of blood, had to have blood transfusion. And then from something that should have been a reasonably simple procedure, it turned out to be a very major surgery. So then I'm still recovering 7-8 weeks later. As a result, I'm anemic. I've just started exercising again. But, the body takes time in any case, but when you have that kind of surgery and that kind of level. So I feel bad to sort of say, yes, they did abandon me there. That's the truth. But I also feel that I have to say that they were brilliant when they were there. So I felt really looked after.
Yeah, but that's not kind of, I hear what you're saying because you're a very polite person, but it's not like, when they were there, they were great. The fact that they left me bleeding and I had to crawl out like a Stephen King novel after an hour. I mean, I want to say something about you though, because this is the first time I've had the pleasure of meeting you once, but we've had a lot of interactions through work. Throughout all of this, you just said to me, I'm a bit unwell. You were quite extraordinary, and you kept. Had I known, I would have been arsing around with emails and the usual nonsenses that I do. And my cousin Francine, whose shirt she gave it to me for my birthday. You are unbelievable, she says. Can I read a couple of things? I want to read a couple of things out because you're causing quite a stir. This is coming in from Northeast United States of America, from Asa Don Brown. My wife and I lost a baby, and it left a deep impression on our lives. It's a loss no different than any other loss. I've also worked with patients, because he's a psychotherapist, I've also worked with patients that have had multiple losses. For those that keep trying, there's a deep yearning in some to become parents. Absolutely. Sue Sleet, who's up in Fife. Could you read this, Neil?
By all means, having had 2 miscarriages, I have to agree with Gabriella. No support from anyone. As a social work manager, I did not allow my staff who had suffered one, or if my male staff partner had, allocated pre-birth or new baby cases due to the emotional turmoil they were suffering. Often the men get less support than for their partner, she says. It's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it?
Also, Paul Claridge, if I can find, I've got to try and find his. Here we go. This is from Paul Claridge. You see how you're touching people, Gabriella. You understand it's not, you're not speaking into the void.
I told you at the beginning, so many people have experienced it.
And these are all, our listeners and viewers all over the world. My youngest son was stillborn in 2004. At the time, there was a lot of support for mothers, but little or no support for fathers, other than the lovely people at SADS, the Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Charity. God, that's an awkward name. It's not charity. I'd change the name for you.
But if so little attention, like you say, Gabriella, is given to it, it's not surprising there's not an awful lot of support, is there? Because it's not really been being discussed apart from on platforms like this nowadays.
Exactly.
And this is the whole point of doing what we're doing today is raise that awareness, because people would need support, and it's so common. It seems crazy that it's not there.
Yes, and that's
back
exactly
from the States. Sorry, it says, Sue, I wholeheartedly agree. This is he's replying to Sue Sleet, who's up in Fife, and he's in America. When my wife and I lost our baby, we were in a small city hospital in Canada. We worked with the staff on a professional basis. I had a friend who was an ER physician who approached me and said, "It's not like it was a baby." Holy shit. It's not like it was a baby. Oh, God, I feel sick. The hospital staff...
10 out of 10 for bedside manner there.
That's nice. Sadly, he was obviously away when they taught bedside manner as a doctor. The hospital staff offered some support for my wife, but nothing for my child, who'd been with us upon the discovery. Oh, I can't. No, it's too upsetting. Jesus. Asa Don. Wow. Asa, man, that's awful.
Yeah, and you see, people deal with it in different ways, but I think you've touched the nerve there in the sense that the lack of support. And I wonder whether, it's a catch-22. If you don't talk about it, you don't get support. For example, now for women, there's this big movement in the last few years about menopause, which is incredible. And I'm so, so happy about that. But that's come as a result of so many people speaking about it and demanding, we work longer. So women will be working much longer. They are a big part of the workforce. So things are moving. And I think now is the time to then start talking about this sort of thing, because, oh my gosh, that phrase, "it wasn't yet a baby," I've heard that as well. And, if it's yourself that you say, so for example, in my head, I kept thinking, and I found solace in this, instead of saying, well, I didn't see a heartbeat. So for me, it wasn't a baby, in the sense that I tried not to be too attached. But if someone else has said that, that would have really made me very angry, because it's not their place to say that. It's, if it helps me in the sense that I think, okay, I never saw that heartbeat, so technically there was no life, maybe that works for me to cope with it. But
it's okay for you to say, but not for other people to say that. That's just terrible bedside manner. I'm absolutely shocked.
I think that's one of the most callous. I'm reeling from that. I don't know why people go into the medical profession if that's your attitude.
I've got a question, if I may. Any idea why the numbers are so high? Is it like a big part of science that needs evolving, or something that we're missing here collectively?
Well, I've done as a producer, of course, I've done quite a bit of research into this, but the way I would describe it, and I'm no expert in this, is that ultimately nature makes a selection. So miscarriages, when an embryo or these bunch of cells, if you like, at the very, very, very beginning, are not chromosomically, or there are some defects. There's things that don't work out, okay? And it's very common in that sense that, let's face it, having a baby is a miracle. So many things need to align for it to happen. And so, it's common because just like in anything that we produce, that we make, that nature makes, there are some faults. And it's nobody's fault. It's not the woman's fault. It's not the man's fault. It just happens. And the thing about numbers is, I'm pretty sure they're much higher than that, but they're not reported. So if you naturally miscarriage, when you think you're having a period, but might not be a period, you could be miscarrying at 4 weeks. So I think I've had 3 miscarriages, but who knows? Maybe I've had more. And I just mistook it for a late period, a slightly later, heavier period. So we don't know. But again, I think there's some things that are preventable. So I was talking to a doctor just at the weekend, and a friend actually, and she was saying there could be small adjustments that can be made. So if you're prone to blood clots, for example, you can take some medication that might prevent a miscarriage. But ultimately, nature needs to do its course. So there's nothing you can stop from happening. And a lot of people will experience this and go on and have healthy, perfect babies. So I guess, for me, it's kind of like, well, I'm approaching, my end of fertility, if you like. I'm getting close to menopause. But if this happens to anyone, under 45, I'd just say, just keep trying, because it's a law of numbers, right? So it shouldn't be happening, of course, and we wouldn't want it to happen, but it's part of nature.
It's an interesting, and if that gives you comfort, that's I totally get that. There's so many comments coming in. I'm going to whip through some of them if I can, Gabby.
While you do that, I'm going to get the cat in.
Oh, get the cat in. Yes, get the cat in.
You want to see the cat?
It's a cat. I don't want to see it. It's a cat. Give a shit. It's a cat. I'll pretend I'm interested. Elizabeth Green from New York. I had an early... You're going to see some acting now, so I'm going to pretend to be interested in a cat, because I'm obviously a dog person. Elizabeth Green in Manhattan.
Gone. Oh, no, she's here.
It's a cat. You're a servant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. Elizabeth Green. I had an early miscarriage 6 weeks before giving birth. What? That's when I turned... Elizabeth, you're going to have to explain that. I had an early miscarriage 6 weeks before giving birth. That's when I turned to nutrition, vitamins, etc. Paul Claridge makes an interesting point. The problem is that the loss of a baby is seen as a taboo subject. Oh, yeah. Even by medical staff. That's a crazy thing in this so-called modern world. Wow. And Liz Saul, who is your pal, you should read this out.
Shall I share this one? Bless you, Gabriella. I feel for you, but don't beat about the bush if treatment is bad, especially in your circumstances. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Wow. It's we're not going to see the cat then.
Oh, she's here. Do you want to see her?
Well, look,
you're not a cat lover, but I think you will like her.
To be interested.
You will like
acting.
her.
Oh, actually, that's a really nice cat. Bugger.
I told you.
That is a really cool cat.
Look, she's got green eyes like her mum.
Oh, that's
a bundle of fluff.
I don't even
Clearly,
like cats. That's a really great cat. Does it have a name? Spaghetti Tortellini? What's her name?
Luna.
Of course, Luna.
Because she's a bit of a lunatic.
Yes. She's a really lovely cat. I don't think I'll get on with a cat because, I like affection. And it's like, oh, you're back. Big deal. Who cares?
Well, mine is very affectionate towards me, but unfortunately, she only loves me and she tolerates my partner. There you go. Come on.
That's like every relationship. I get tolerated. I just get tolerated. The thing about it is, I want to stress this to the outside. Here's the kind of dichotomy. And I know I've only met you once, but we've had so much communication. I kind of feel that I know you. If I overstep the mark, tell me to shut up. But the dichotomy is you're going through hell on earth. Some of it physically awful. That graphic description was just ghastly. And a lot of it obviously affecting your mental health because, of course, it would. And yet to the outside world, to a virtual stranger like myself, we're in a working environment, working together. Everything, you were so together, so efficient. Was it a stretch for you Because I had no idea. I just thought you were a bit unwell, and then eventually, after weeks of this, you said, "Oh, by the way," and I felt an idiot. I'll be honest with you.
No, not at all.
No, but I did. I thought, "Oh, jeez, I hope I didn't say anything stupid."
No. And look,
you know how you rewind things.
Mental health is something I've always been very passionate about, even before, in some ways, excuse me to say this, but even if it's become a bit trendy to be interested in this.
No, you're right.
It's a very, very important subject. So to put in perspective, so my father, when I was 21, committed suicide. He was a manic depressive. He suffered a lot. And despite that, I've always been a very, very upbeat kind of Pollyanna kind of girl, always looking for the bright in things and stuff. And that's what's probably helped me. So carry on with work. I mean, I did take time off. I was very aware that I needed it, but I also was aware that I'm probably still suffering with the shock of that night more than the actual loss. I think
horrendous.
The loss
I mean, I've only heard it. I've only heard it, and my stomach is still knotted up. So, and I'm just listening like everybody else. So, I can't imagine what that did to you.
But I think I'm very open to talk about it. So the presenter I work with, who you know very well, she was very close. We talked, but I also talked to anyone. I talked to my neighbors about it. I've never made it a secret. But what's for me also, I also feel I don't want to become what happened to me, if that makes sense. So life,
you don't want to be the Yoko Ono of miscarriages.
Exactly. So it's happened to me, but life goes on. And when I know myself enough to sort of know when my flags are up in terms of my mental health. So at that point, carrying on with work was like a crutch that I needed. I needed something to hang on to remind me that life is more than just what's happened to me. And then a couple of weeks later, when I physically recovered, I then said to my partner, let's go away. Let's spend some time, because he was grieving as well. And yeah, I might have had the brunt physically, but emotionally, I think he was more distraught than I was, because he, I always had that kind of like, let's not get too excited. But he was like, oh, no, this time will definitely happen. So for him, it was, very, very, very difficult.
And also, can I just add, as a bloke,
I love the way you say that. I love the way you, if I'm understanding right, allow the grief process to take its course. It's a difficult process, grief of any kind. It's a sod, but not wanting to be defined by it.
Exactly, and that's why
for me, it was always finding that time to do the grief and then let it go. Otherwise, you just carry it for the rest of your life.
There's so many things to unpack here.
In my personal experience,
and
so much
just
to
sorry,
unpack.
Russ,
what I was going to say, hang on, is that first of all, not to let it define you, because I didn't want to be a professional widower, and I don't agree with that. But also, as a man, you feel so useless, and you're that's part of the mix. There's nothing you can do. You're not going through the physicality of it and the nightmare of it. You're going through the emotional roller coaster of it, but you do feel pretty useless when these things are happening to those that you love.
Well, and here, if I may, from my personal experience, a bit of not advice, but what I would say to men if they had their partner, wife, girlfriend going through that, I think there's nothing you can do, but there's a lot you can do. There's a lot of practical things you can do. Men are very good at practical things. So, us women, we organize things. So in my household, I'm the one who does the shopping, the cooking, just arrange things. So in moments like that, obviously, I'm not able to think about dinner. I'm not able to think, oh, we need to do the Tesco food shop or whatever. So I think my thing would be, think about the practical things, because when you're going through that sort of stuff, it can help you to keep going, but also, things that might slip my mind. So if you're a couple like us, that we split our roles, like I'll take care of this, you take care of that, and I'm physically unable to do so, then jump in and do that. That's a very tangible thing you can do. And if you're not in a position where mentally, you can even begin to think, about dinner or whatever, ask for help. ask, you know, friends, like your best buddies, sort of say, mate, I'm looking after Gabriella. Can you arrange a delivery or something for us? Just little practical things. And in fact, talking of, I think the most touching and most beautiful thing that helped me was two things, actually. A friend arranged for a delivery voucher for me, so I didn't have to worry about food. The other one sent me a big parcel from I think it was M&S with lots of goodies and, you know, like sweets and whatever you need. And things like that are so much more helpful than, say, just sending flowers. I think, you know, a week later, you know, quick bell, how you doing? A month later. But it's the same with any kind of things, whether it's grief, whether, you know, because life moves on so quickly and we forget that people are still suffering. So in the midst of when it all happens, there's everyone around. But then a month later, I'm sure, Ross, it's been the same for you, you know, a month later, 6 months later, when, you know, that's when probably you need more of that emotional support. At the beginning, you probably need more the practical. At least that's my experience. And that's why I mentioned, so going back to your point about not being defined.
It's so easy, though, to get caught up in life because everything is just so damn fast at the moment, isn't it? I mean, you're right.
Well, put yourself a reminder. So I have a very, very close friend of mine has just lost her mum a couple of weeks ago. And I'll make a point of, even to a point of making reminders in my phone every few days. How are you feeling? How are you coping? Can I help with anything? You know, because you're right, days to us fly by, you know, in the midst of everyday life. But if you're in the midst of that kind of grief, to you, you know, it feels so slow and it feels.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. So, but I was going to make another point and I've forgot it now.
That's all right. It'll come back, I'm sure.
Call yourself
Ask the magic cat.
Call yourself a professional producer.
But this is the thing. I'm not producing right now. You are. I'm just a guest. I'm never decide.
Good comeback, Gabriella. Very good.
I'll never decide the glass. I'm never.
Hang on, I'm going to look wise again.
That really suits you. Oh, that's the point I was going to make. And I think that's quite an important point. So, you know what you were saying about not being defined by what happens to you. And, you know, it's like some people will hang on to traumas from childhood and stuff like that. And I think you need to get to an age where you need to deal with it and move on. And the reason why I mentioned in the beginning about my father's suicide is because, again, I didn't want that to be the thing that defines me, you know, or, you know, people know it's happened. I will always talk about it. This is why I sat on boards of mental health charities, and I know how important this is. But at the same time, you know, I've learned to live with it. And if someone's going through that, perhaps I can offer a little bit more of an insight of what it's like to be a child who's lost.
How were the rest of your family with that, though? You've obviously
well, we had a very...
I'm going to say processed. It sounds American, but you know what I mean. I don't know if you have siblings. Are they of the same view?
I think it also boils down to character and what kind of personality you are. So I am very, very glass half full kind of person. And when it happened, I have a stepbrother. So my father was, you know, had a child before me, who's several years older, and we had very, very different reactions to it. I think mainly because of our character. So he's more of the opposite. He, you know, things are always tough, except when they're better, kind of thing. And for him, and I still 25 years later, I think the guilt is still eating him up. Whereas I've made a choice. I made a choice to respect my dad's gesture, however hard and unbelievably painful it is, and how I physically cannot comprehend it, because, you know, it's something that I cannot understand what drives you to that point. But at the same time, my love for him, I've turned my love into that respect. And the ultimate respect I can offer to him is to respect his gesture, no matter how painful it is. That's what he wanted.
So
he made that decision. And his decision was not a spur of the moment decision. He planned it. And when I look back at the minute details, it would have taken him months to plan. So it wasn't a decision he took lightly. He was a wonderful man. He's someone who, you know, absolutely adored us. But for him, you know, he made that decision, took all the planning. He even left an envelope with the exact amount of money for the funeral, all the bills paid 6 months for 6 months on the house, all this kind of details, you know, like pocket money for different things, you know, whether it's the cleaner or whatever it is. So the way I dealt with it was painful, really, really horrible. You know, 21 is still quite young. You still want, you know, I always think I would love to know his opinion on, you know, politics or whatever. I just don't know so much about him. But at the same time, I've come to terms. That was his decision. And the only thing I can do for him is live my life in a way that would respect him and make him proud. The other side of the spectrum.
Oh, sorry, go on.
The other side of the spectrum is my brother, who feels guilty. He thinks we should have saved him. We should have done something else. And we love each other to bits, but we are sometimes in conflict on that when I tell him, look, you know, he was suffering a very terrible illness that we could, you know, even the professionals couldn't help him. There's nothing we could have done. And if we tried to do something, we would have gone against his will. Could
you give us, only if you want to, because
sure.
I want to just unpack some of this, a little bit of context. So he had a major illness. If I'm reading this correctly, your father had a major illness, and he decided
he was depressed. He was depressed for many years. He was manic depressive, had all sorts of treatments, even hospital stays. He tried absolutely everything. I think he told me the first time, you know, I remember we sat down, I must have been 12 or 13, put this big book with a big word of what is depression, and tried to explain what he was going through so that I would understand why there were moments where he just couldn't get out of bed. And then 5 minutes later, he'd be up for going out, and I couldn't quite work out why. So he explained that. So he had this really horrific illness. And, you know, he said, it's like a cancer eating my mind, and there's nothing, you know, I can do about it. I'm very lucky in that I've never experienced it. So I don't understand what he went through, but in the same way, I don't understand, you know, a cancer in the liver, or, you know, there's so many things we don't understand, and we just have to accept that that's what happened. Does that answer your question?
Last week,
I think that's the most elegant way I've ever heard something like that put. What a beautiful way of putting it. Gabriel, that's absolutely lovely.
Now, last week we rolled out something that I've been trying to get together for 3-4 years, but I couldn't wait for others to get on board. So with Lucia Blissett, we did a show in a theatre last week, all about mental health, and suicide came up. What? And suicide came up.
Go. Tell us. Tell us.
No. This is Gabriella's spot. We can talk about another. It went great. And we're going to roll it out with various subjects. But we had 4 guests, and I was like not like the host, but, you know, asking the questions. And I'd never met any of them before. And we asked the audience, suicide, is it selfish? Oof. And no one could answer. And no one could answer, because one of the guests, his son, who had everything going for him, happy, good career in the army, children happy, committed suicide. I can't say committed suicide, ended his own life. Mm-hmm. The father, also ex-army, is sitting there and announces, this is the stuff when you think, well, your own life isn't quite like this, had tried to kill himself 3 times. He then subsequently, over a coffee afterwards, told me some of the details. Jesus Christ. And someone was looking after him, because, like, first time he tried to hang himself and the tree broke.
Wow.
And I knew him well enough. I said, you think you're a failure, right? You think you're a failure. I said, thank God you failed at this 3 times, not once, twice, but 3 times. Are you going to do it again? I asked him point blank, you can do it again? He said, no. And I said, did you do it because you were so upset about your son? He said, no. Now, this is where I get into very murky waters. He wanted to be back with his son.
Wow.
Now, if you're I'm not religious. I don't believe in anything. In anything at all. All right. If you're religious and you think, well, I'm going to be reunited with my son, I can kind of see the warped logic in that, you know? But if you're not, it's like, whoa. But the thing about your dad And the thing about all people who end their own lives, and we've interviewed many, many, many of them on the Daily Show on Men's Radio Station, is this. For them, the suffering's over. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a better place, whatever that might be. But for everybody left behind, which is why you've been so strong and your attitude is amazing, Gabby, that suffering is a lifetime. That's what you've handed down. That's the problem. You've handed down a lifetime of suffering for everybody who just loved you.
But here's the thing. You can then make a choice. And I choose to be happy.
That is a profound thing, because people think they can make choices unless that happens. We've all got this kind of sliding scale. I can make a choice on that. I could choose to get another Diet Coke. I could choose to spend £100 today on something, but I couldn't choose to be happy in the fact. But the thing is, though, we either have choice or we don't, isn't it? And the fact that you can make a choice, I think we can all learn so much from that, because that is so. That is so empowering.
Big question from Kim.
Empowering, and the power lies with us, right?
It's amazing. I want to come back to that. Just let's. How are we doing? We're all right. Kimmy Lashmar is saying this. Do you think that by saying someone took their own lives is more acceptable than mentioning the word suicide? It's semantics, Kimmy. It's semantics.
It's a slightly less nasty way of saying it. It's kind of a light version.
The thing about it is that we don't say commit suicide, because suicide used to be a crime, therefore you were committing a crime. It is no longer deemed a crime, although there's all sorts of legal aspects. If you leave a suicide note and your suicide attempt is not successful, the police will get involved, most likely. Then you're in a whole world of shit that you don't want. You really don't want. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's semantics, but we don't say commit suicide because it's no longer a crime. They chose. But you chose to be happy. Your brother, and I have endless sympathy for that, chose that he feels guilty. He felt he didn't do enough.
Yeah, and I think, the difference between us is he lived in Italy, and so does my brother, very, very close to the border in Switzerland. And he had only just seen him a few days before, whereas I hadn't seen him for a bit longer than that. So I think, it's that shock of like, hold on a minute, I saw him, he was fine. But ultimately, it's we've recently had to extend the lease on his of the cemetery, so we had to discuss this again, and it's he has two beautiful adult children now, and he has struggled with this, and he's still struggling, and he still looks at we go to the cemetery together, and he says, "I'm sorry, I let you down," and I keep saying, no, you didn't. You really didn't. It's not, he made a choice. And going back to your question, is it selfish? It would be like saying someone is selfish because they die of cancer because they didn't look after themselves well enough before that.
Kind of. I mean, it's a really...
But is it fair? No, it's not.
It's a whole day seminar. That issue is a whole day seminar. This is coming in from Kimmy Lashmar. Boy, we're touching some nerves today. My brother was determined. He obviously ended his life. And I accept what he did more than if he was in an accident.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that.
But
because it was his choice.
Yeah, it was his choice. And ultimately, it's your life. It's kind of your life. Well, no, it's not kind of. It is your life. But just to put on this guilt thing, the thing that your brother's feeling, my wife died of cancer. There's absolutely nothing we can do. And I still feel that, was there something I didn't do? Well, it was
I've wrestled with this one big time.
Right?
It still catches me today, but I love the empowering aspect of choice. We can frame it, interpret it, and choose any way we want. And I think the more that message about anything, the more that message gets out there, I think the most important, because I think people feel empowered up to a point, but they go, I could never make a choice on that. I could be fine unless that happens. But the point is, we're either okay from the inside out or we're not. There's no kind of halfway, is there? I'm being a bit clunky in the way I'm saying that, but I hear what you're saying loud and clear. And I'll say the way you articulated that, I think is some of the most beautiful words about subject matters I think I've ever heard, Gabriella. Wow.
Thank you.
And also, I'm just going to say this, and it's probably very controversial. If you've just had enough It's your decision. And yeah, it's a selfish decision in many ways, and a lot of people may well be heartbroken, but it's your life. And if you've just had enough of it, it's up to you. It's down to you.
And I have to look back and think about his last years of his life and the quality of life he had. Was it a good life? It wasn't. He was very, very sick. You couldn't plan. You couldn't, he was he was unable to be a good dad to me because he was not himself. He's this illness, which is, a mental illness that's taken over his life. That's it. It wasn't the dad I had in childhood. It was someone who had an illness, and that, it's I would compare it to dementia that takes away the person that you knew, and so physically, if I had wanted to be selfish and prevented him from doing it, and that's what I said to my brother, I said, had we stopped him, he would have had a terrible quality of life. And ultimately, we would have had a terrible quality of life. We would have felt shortchanged. It's like, this is not the man that we know. This is not the man
that is such a fascinating.
And yeah, I think about him every day. I mean, it's been 25 years, but he's with me every step of the way. But at the same time, when I think about his last years, where he wasn't able to physically get out of bed, or, he hadn't brushed his teeth for days because he wasn't physically able to, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, well, no, he's at peace. And my brother is a religious man. And I think that's played in his guilt, Catholic guilt of, and also, he didn't have, my father was a Catholic man. He was, especially towards the end of his life, he tried to find some comfort in this, and it helped. But, but he, I think for my brother, the fact that, in the eyes of the church, he committed the ultimate sin, that doesn't sit well with him.
But you know what? It's none of their business.
All, is it?
Gabby,
I know, but if you are, I know,
really not helpful.
We can look at it. If we're not religious, we can look at it like that. But if your life is lived in the light of God, then, and your God is telling you this is a crime, this is terrible, then you have this difficult situation in your heart that you're arm wrestling, which is what happened to my brother.
And if God was so great, why did he decide that your father was going to have a horrible life? There's a lot of instances we can say that. I gave up, and I thought, no, this is just nonsense.
It's a very personal, intimate decision. Of course it is. And but ultimately, whether you're religious or not, sorry to interrupt, but I think whether you're religious or not, if someone around you happens to do this, to take their own life, try and think and try and look at it from their point of view. Just like you said, they just had enough. And who are you to say and be the selfish one? No, you need to be here for me.
That is where that is the underlying thing that I'm going to underscore there. You, by condemning someone to live a horrible life, are being selfish.
It's a powerful frame. It's a powerful frame, isn't it? I mean, we've all got free will. It's not for us to take other people's free will away. Assuming they're in the, then it all gets complicated again. Are they in the right mind? Power of attorneys and all that sort of thing. And it's a really, really complicated one. I wrestled with this until it absolutely did my head in, Gabriella, about a different subject. But the as I say, I keep on saying it, the way you articulated it was beautiful, and it's a powerful point of view. It is a powerful point of view.
I knew you'd be a great guest, but I didn't realize you would be an outstanding, phenomenal, gobsmacking, unbelievable freaking.
Can I just, because it's been a very heavy show today, can I just tell you something a bit amusing? Do you know what I did yesterday? Do you know what I did yesterday? For the first time in 20 years, rollerblading, right? Do you know how I hurt myself yesterday?
Rollerblading, you idiot! What the hell are you doing?
And now I'm limping around like an old bloke, and I'm really.
Only a dick of our age would say, "Hey, let's go rollerblading." Pretend we're 19.
But you know what? Well done to you for embracing something new.
You all froze at that point. I can't think what you're saying, but I will get up and limp like an old man.
No, I was saying, well done to you for trying something new.
It wasn't new. It was a road humper. Like I normally do those really well. And this, I went that way. My knee went that way.
Everybody,
no.
desperate.
I'm so sorry.
Unbelievable.
We shouldn't really laugh. It's not.
Oh well,
funny.
no, we should. I've known him for
funny.
many
Funny,
years. I've worked with him at Capital
and you
for
can be
many
quiet
years.
as well. Now I've got my producers laughing. Now everybody's laughing. Now everyone in the pub's laughing.
You know, I hope you were wearing lycra.
Oh,
no, I will not be in that.
That's
I
a
will
bit
not be in
too
the
much.
No, not for anybody.
Gabriella Incalza, you have been phenomenal. Thank you so much. Thank you for being so open, so honest.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
Also to putting the most complicated issues of life and death with such clarity,
yes,
and with such thoughtfulness.
Yes,
you
I
know,
know.
and saying to people, before you judge, just have a little think.
Yeah.
Neil and I will be back on Wednesday. Gabby, thank you so much. We wish you well. You are an extraordinary human being.
So lovely to meet you.
Until Wednesday, stay out of trouble, everybody, especially you, Neil, and your stupid rollerblades. Bye-bye.